My name is Rachel Monroe, and for most of my life, I've worked with my hands. Not in the way people think when they hear that phrase. My hands don't build walls or paint canvases, but they heal. I'm a licensed massage therapist with over a decade of experience, not a hobbyist, not someone who learned from YouTube. I studied, trained, and practiced until my fingers could read pain the way a musician reads notes. I've worked with pro athletes, worn out nurses, office workers with bad chairs and broken posture. I know the human body in a way few people do, not just bones and muscles, but the weight people carry that has nothing to do with gravity. But my career, my calling, was also the beginning of the quiet end of my marriage. My ex-husband Tom never really understood what I did. He tried at first, told people proudly what I did for a living helped me paint the walls of my studio. But slowly over time, something in him changed. Maybe it was jealousy. Maybe it was insecurity. Maybe it was just that old idea that a woman's touch belongs to her family and no one else. He never raised his voice about it. That wasn't Tom. But I could hear it in the way he said things like, "Long day" or "all male clients again." That dry smile. That half-joke that was never really a joke. We were married for 10 years. Then we weren't. It ended the same way it had lived quietly. No slammed doors, no dramatic affairs. Just silence at the dinner table until we finally accepted we had nothing left to say. He moved out. Our son Logan stayed. Logan was 21 by then, a college junior on a sports scholarship playing semi-pro football, bouncing between campus and my place depending on the season. Tall like his father, quiet like me. He had this grounded energy, a discipline I admired more than he knew. He'd grown up watching me work. Sometimes I'd find him lingering outside my home studio, listening to the soft music I played during sessions, watching how I moved. He was always fascinated by anatomy, healing, recovery. I used to joke that he got the bones from his dad and the heart from me. We had a good rhythm, Logan and I. Late-night dinners, talking through sore muscles and game day pressure. We were close, maybe closer than most mothers and sons, but not in any strange way. We'd simply been through a lot together. He respected my work. Even asked me to teach him stretches now and then, or how to release tension after training. But something shifted last fall. The night was crisp, the windows humming with the wind. Logan came in late from practice, his shoulders heavy, his expression drawn tight. "You're stiff," I said, watching him roll his neck. He groaned. "Coach had us doing overload drills." I feel like someone parked a truck on my back. Without thinking, I stood and moved behind him at the kitchen table. My hands, trained, practiced, found his traps pressed gently, searching for the knots I knew would be there. I worked slowly, breath synced with movement the way I always had. Still the best, he muttered. It was nothing. Just words. But the way he said it, so soft, so sure, it caught something in me I didn't expect. I smiled, small and quiet. It's what I do. But there was a pause, a silence that settled between us as I worked. Not awkward, not tense, just still. Like the room itself was holding its breath. He didn't move away, and neither did I. That night stayed with me, not for what happened, but for what didn't. Something had changed, barely imperceptibly. Like the temperature in a room rising 1 degree at a time until you notice the warmth, but can't quite say when it began. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen to find him shirtless at the stove making breakfast. "Morning," he said with a grin, flipping a pancake. And I just stood there for a second longer than usual watching him. His back was strong, sculpted from discipline. And I was a woman whose job was to read bodies, understand how they carried weight, tension, exhaustion. Something fluttered in my chest. I brushed it away. Muttered something about not needing him to cook. "It's the least I can do after that shoulder rescue," he joked. And suddenly the memory of my hands on him didn't feel clinical anymore. It felt warm. It lingered. Later that afternoon, he peeked into my home studio, leaned against the doorframe, casual but thoughtful. "Hey, Mom, got time for one more client?" I raised an eyebrow. "You sure you can afford my rate?" He grinned. "If I say yes, do I get the VIP treatment?" I laughed. "You always do." And just like that, he stepped into the room and I prepped the table. Fresh linens, warm oil, pale light. He lay down. I began my work. My hands moved over familiar terrain, his back, shoulders, spine. I could feel where the strain lived, where his body told stories his mouth never did. Then, in the middle of it all, he said something that pulled me to stillness. "Do you ever get tired of always being the strong one?" I froze. My hands paused mid-motion. Sometimes I said quietly, sometimes yes. There was a long silence, then softer than before. "You don't have to be not with me." And that's when something shifted again. Not in the air, not in the room, but in me. His words didn't ask for anything, they offered. Offered something I hadn't realized I was starving for. Care. After that session, things didn't change on the surface. Logan still came and went between training and school. We still shared late-night meals, still laughed over shows we both liked, still talked about life and football and the tightness in his hamstrings. But something had shifted. Not in the way we acted, just in the way we noticed. A few days later, I walked into the kitchen and caught him standing at the counter, drying a mug. His sleeves were pushed up, showing the quiet power of his arms. It wasn't the first time I'd seen him like that. But this time, I lingered. He looked over, smiled in that easy way he had. "You good?" I nodded. "Yeah, just tired, I guess." "Want me to return the favor?" he asked. "Massage-wise?" I laughed. "You've been practicing for 1 week and you already want to take over the business." He shrugged. "You've been carrying a lot for a long time. Someone should take care of you for once." There was no sarcasm in his voice, just warmth. Steady and real. I didn't answer right away, but later that afternoon, while folding towels in the studio, I heard him behind me. "Lesson 2, he said. I turned. He was standing in the doorway, that same thoughtful look on his face. Not pushy, not expectant. Just present. I nodded. "Lesson 2. He stepped in and closed the door. I sat on the edge of the massage table, motioning for him to come closer. I showed him how to warm the oil between his hands, how to move with breath, not force, how intention mattered more than strength. Then I turned and he placed his hands on my shoulders. They were large, strong, but tentative. Like he was more afraid of doing too much than too little. "Here?" he asked softly. I nodded. His hands moved with care, learning the tension points he had felt in his own body so many times. I inhaled slow and steady as his thumbs worked into the knots along my upper back. And for the first time in years, I let go. Not completely, but enough. Enough to feel my muscles soften. Enough to stop holding my breath. He didn't speak much, but his touch did. It said, "I see you. I respect you. I'm here." His hands found the weight I'd been carrying, not just in my back, but in the invisible places, shoulders stiff from decades of being strong for everyone else. "You're good at this," I murmured. He paused, then said quietly, "I just want you to feel what I've always felt. Safe, supported." And I did. When the massage ended, I sat still for a long moment. His hands drifted away gently, like the last waves of a tide receding. I turned and looked up at him. There was something in his eyes. Not confusion, not hesitation, just care. Deep, honest care. And for a second I didn't see my son. I saw Logan, the man. The steady, kind, intuitive man I had helped raise. And he saw me, not just Mom, but Rachel. A woman. He reached out slowly, wrapping his arms around me in a quiet, grounding hug. No rush. No awkwardness, just warmth. Like he was saying, I've got you. Just breathe. So I did. And in that moment, I realized something. This closeness we had, whatever it was becoming, wasn't something I needed to run from. It was something I had to understand. Because it was real. The days that followed felt quiet. But not the kind of quiet that comes from distance. It was fuller now. Like something had settled between us, unspoken, but understood. Logan didn't bring up the massage, neither did I. But the air carried it, soft as breath, real as gravity. One night I was tidying the living room after dinner when I heard his voice again, floating from the doorway of my studio. "Hey," he said casually. "Got a sec?" I turned, half laughing. "You really like hanging around this place now, huh?" He shrugged. "It's calm in here." He stepped inside slowly, not crossing the room yet. I was thinking, maybe you could keep teaching me. Like actually teach me. Not just for fun. I tilted my head. "You thinking of switching majors?" He smiled, a little sheepish. "Not exactly, but you always say touch can heal. I guess I want to understand it better. Maybe I just want to know what it really means." I watched him for a moment, this tall, grounded young man who used to fall asleep in my lap after soccer practice. Now he stood before me with hands that carried gentleness and purpose, and eyes that looked at me like I was still the center of his world, even if neither of us could explain what that meant anymore. "All right," I said quietly. "Let's start with presence." He listened, really listened as I demonstrated. How to center the breath, how to notice more than just muscle, how to feel where people carry sadness, tension, things they never speak aloud. I sat on the edge of the massage table and turned my back to him. I felt his hands hover before making contact. There was no hesitation now, just care. A natural rhythm growing between pressure and pause. "You're picking it up fast," I said softly. He didn't answer right away, but I could feel the intention behind every motion. His thumbs kneading gently into the top of my shoulders, slowly easing the years of stress buried deep inside. "Do you know," I said, voice low, "you used to climb onto my lap when you were 3, put your tiny hands on my face and say, 'You're tired, Mama,' like you could see it before I even knew." He chuckled softly. "I don't remember that." "I do." And then his hands paused, resting flat between my shoulder blades, grounding me. "Maybe I've always known how to care for you," he said. "I just didn't know how to show it. Until now." The words hung in the air like something sacred. I didn't speak, just let the silence stretch. Because it wasn't uncomfortable. It was healing. The kind of silence where nothing needs to be fixed, just held. As he continued, I found myself relaxing again, deeper this time. His hands moved down my arms, not rushed, just tracing the long arcs of tension and release. There was something soothing about the way he touched, not just technical, not just practiced, but human, personal. His fingers slowed at the base of my neck, pressing gently. And then, he stopped. I turned slightly, meeting his eyes over my shoulder. Neither of us spoke, but something passed between us, a shared memory maybe, a truth, a recognition that we were standing at the edge of something neither of us could name, but both of us felt. It didn't feel wrong. It felt real. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the soft hum of the dishwasher in the distance. My mind kept replaying the look in Logan's eyes, steady, unguarded, quiet, but full. Not desire, not confusion, just attention. Pure, undiluted attention. I'd been seen before, of course. Clients, colleagues, even Tom back in the early years of our marriage. But this was different. This felt like being seen by someone who knew every version of me, the tired, the strong, the broken, the brave, and didn't flinch. The next morning was cold and gray. I was wiping down the massage table prepping for a regular client when Logan passed by the studio door shirtless again after his run towel over his shoulder hair damp. He didn't stop. He just smiled as he walked past, the kind of smile you give someone when you already know what they're thinking. And I stood there for a moment, hands still on the table, unsure whether I was the one being studied now, or if I had been all along. Later that week, he asked again. Need any help in the studio? I almost said no. Almost told him I was fine. But something about the way he asked, casual but quietly hopeful, made me nod. I showed him how to arrange the linens, how to fold towels the right way, how to place oils so they were always within reach. He listened like he always did, with full attention. At one point, he handed me a bottle of lavender and our fingers brushed. It should have been nothing. But I looked up, and he was already looking at me. There wasn't anything inappropriate in his gaze, not a hint of discomfort, just warmth and something deeper. He cleared his throat first. You're good at creating peace, he said. I've had practice, I replied, trying to smile. He hesitated, then quieter. Do you ever miss being cared for? The question hung in the space between us like smoke. I didn't answer. I couldn't not right away. But that evening after dinner, I found myself lingering in the hallway outside his room. I didn't knock. I just stood there for a moment, hand resting on the doorframe, thinking about how long it had been since anyone touched me just to say I see you. When I turned to leave, he opened the door. We both froze. Then he smiled, gentle, open. I was just coming to find you. I said nothing, just followed him into the studio. There were no lessons this time, no jokes about being a student. Just the soft rustle of fresh linens, the low music in the background, and the quiet understanding that we were moving into a new kind of silence. I sat on the table, and this time, he didn't ask for guidance. He stood behind me, hands resting lightly on my shoulders, waiting until I exhaled. Then he began. His touch was steady, confident now. It held nothing but care. My body responded before I could even think, easing into the rhythm of his movements, softening under the pressure of someone who knew where to find the pain and how to coax it away. You're carrying more today, he murmured. I nodded. I always do. Most people just don't notice. I do, he said. And he did. The session lasted longer than usual, not because we planned it that way, but because neither of us wanted it to end. Logan's hands moved with practiced rhythm now, down my arms, across my upper back. Each stroke calm and certain, his presence grounding me like an anchor in warm water. He knew where to pause, where to apply more pressure, and where to simply be still. No words passed between us for a while, but I could feel the weight of everything unsaid in his touch. His fingers traced the space between my shoulder blades where years of tension had settled like dust. And slowly, with each pass, I felt myself letting go of the years I'd spent holding everything together, of the loneliness I never spoke aloud, of the woman I'd stopped seeing in the mirror. I exhaled deeply, not from pain, from relief. You're incredible at this, I whispered, eyes closed. He didn't answer right away. Then softly, just behind me, his voice. I just wanted you to feel cared for, the way you always made me feel. My chest ached in that slow, quiet way that doesn't hurt, but makes you aware of everything inside you. I turned slightly, just enough to see him standing behind me, his hands resting at his sides, now his breath slow and even. Thank you, I said, my voice barely louder than the music in the room. He reached for me. Not abruptly, not with urgency, just slowly wrapping his arms around me in a way that felt complete. I let my head rest against his chest, the scent of clean cotton and lavender oil filling the air between us. His arms tightened gently, like he was afraid I might pull away, but I didn't. I couldn't. I hadn't been held like that in years. Not like a woman, not like a person who mattered. We stayed that way for a long time, not moving, not talking, just breathing together in the quiet space we'd built, tender, fragile, and sacred. When I finally looked up, our eyes met, and everything I'd tried not to name was suddenly there between us. Not shame, not confusion, just truth. "I see you, Mom," he said, voice soft. But the word mom felt too small for what was in his voice, too narrow for what was in his eyes. And I didn't stop him when he leaned down so slowly, like he wanted to give me time to change my mind, and brushed a kiss against my forehead, then my cheek. Then he paused, lips hovering close, waiting. Not pushing, not asking, just offering. And when our lips met, soft, impossibly gentle, it wasn't desire that passed through me. It was everything else. Years of quiet loyalty, years of showing up for one another, years of love that had shifted, grown, deepened into something neither of us had planned, but both of us recognized. We pulled away just enough for our foreheads to touch. His breath warmed my skin. "I'm here," he whispered. And I believed him. More than I'd believed anyone in a very long time. We didn't speak for a while after that. Not out of fear, not guilt. Just silence, the good kind. The kind that wraps around two people like a soft blanket, like the room itself is holding its breath, so nothing delicate gets broken. He stood with me for a long time in that quiet. Then slowly his hand found mine. Our fingers met in a gentle clasp. Nothing possessive. Nothing rushed. Just connection. When I finally pulled away to fold a towel, my hands were steady, but something inside me had changed. Not because of the kiss, but because of everything it carried. That evening we moved through the house the same way we always had. He helped wash the dishes. I sorted the laundry. We laughed over an old movie. But there was something new in the air between us, an ease, a soft understanding. Not everything had to be named. Some things could simply be felt. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen again, barefoot and half awake, making coffee. His hair was a mess, and the light from the window gave him a look of someone caught between a dream and the day. He looked at me and smiled, and I realized then I wasn't afraid of what we had become. I was afraid of having lived my whole life without ever being this fully known. "Good morning," he said softly. I stepped beside him. "Good morning." He handed me a mug, our hands brushing. No spark, no tension, just warmth. That weekend, we didn't talk about what had happened in the studio. We didn't try to label it. But when he walked past me in the hallway and placed a quiet hand on my back, I leaned into it without thinking. Not everything had to be complicated. Sometimes love isn't loud. It isn't wild or sudden. It's built slowly in everyday gestures, in shared silence, in the way someone stays, the way he stayed, the way I let him. One evening, I stepped into the studio alone. The scent of lavender still lingered. The music was low, the air still. I sat on the edge of the table, my palms resting on my thighs, and I closed my eyes. I thought of all the years I'd spent touching people with care, helping them feel human again, and how in the end it wasn't a client or a stranger who brought that gift back to me. It was someone who had known me all along, someone who had watched me give, and quietly chose to give back. When Logan entered the room a few minutes later, he didn't speak. He simply stepped behind me, placed his hands gently on my shoulders, and rested his forehead against the back of my head. We stayed like that, mother and son, woman and man, two people who had weathered life's storms and found comfort in each other. No one would understand it. They didn't need to, because in that quiet